part of their contract will say if there's any loss to the home, like there's a flood that happens or any hazard, then you take that loss. We have nothing to do with that, right? And this is why this is not considered. This now turns into a loan. You're not calling it a loan. You're saying it's a partnership. But what real partnership is there in this, right? If you do not have profit sharing and risk sharing, then there's no real partnership in this. They'll say that, okay, if the home price goes up, then we both share the profits. But if it takes a loss, then you take the loss. We will not. You give us the money that we invested at the bare minimum. This is a loan. At the end of the day, this is a loan. That's why it's not Sharia compliant. Okay. Number 3, it has to be asset-backed transactions. Money cannot generate money in Sharia. Number 4, there has to be avoidance of gharar. So excessive uncertainty cannot exist. Number 5, any investment has to be ethical. So it's good for society, good for the individual, and so on and so forth. There has to be fairness in dealings, which means that there has to be transparency, complete transparency in the transaction. And then there's social responsibility. Social responsibility means keeping in mind that Sharia tries to preserve these 5 things. Number 1, religion. Number 2, life. Number 3, human intellect. Number 4, human progeny. And number 5, human wealth. Okay, so everyone remembers these principles? Okay, if you remember these principles, you're on very good footing. You're not on perfect footing, but you're on very good footing to understand now why things will be permissible and impermissible. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm just going to ask random people to repeat these principles, okay? There are 7 principles that we covered that govern Islamic finance. Who wants to repeat them? Just raise your hand if you feel ready. If you don't, then I will ask you. I will choose at random. You can try some of them. Okay, risk sharing. So wherever there's profit sharing, there has to be risk sharing. Does anyone remember the Arabic principle that I mentioned for that? If you remember this, I will be impressed. Yeah. No, gharar is uncertainty. Al-ghunmu bil-ghurm. Right? So wherever there's profit sharing, there has to be also risk sharing. Okay. What else is there? Prohibition of riba. Okay. What else is there? Sorry, ethical investment. So any investment that we make, for example, we cannot invest, for example, in companies that sell alcohol, companies that have let's say strip clubs, companies that sell pornography, there are gray areas, like companies that sell weapons, for example. Imam Abu Hanifa will say this is permissible because the primary purpose of a weapon is not necessarily to do something haram, right? It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. If there's a company that makes knives, you can do many things with the knife. If you have a gun, you can do many things. Sharia does not see that as inherently evil, right? As opposed to something of which the purpose is primarily something haram, like for example, alcohol, right? So what else is there? There has to be asset-backed transactions. Any transaction, money cannot generate money, right? It has to be backed by one of 2 things. What were the 2 things? Does anyone remember? Yeah, Daniel. Commodities or services. What is a commodity? Yeah. Yeah, any tangible item that can be sold, that is wanted, that can be sold. So like for example, if you sell a pebble, this is not considered a commodity, right? Unless people want it. If they want it, then it's considered mal. Okay, what else is there? A service? What is service? Yeah. Yeah, so something that is intangible, but that you're offering to people that brings benefit to them in their lives, right? So whether that's, for example, leasing, right? Leasing is not something that is physical. It's not something that is tangible. Or you're, hiring someone to do work for you, and so on and so forth, right? These are the only 2 things that are considered, economic activity. Okay. What else? Okay, but that was already mentioned that it has to be asset backed. Yes. Social responsibility, right? Preservation of life, intellect, and so on and so forth. Religion. Okay, what else is there? Risk sharing, I think that was mentioned already. What else is there? Uneven transaction? No, that was not one of them. That was part of riba. That was part of riba. Yeah, sorry. Complete transparency, right? There has to be fairness in dealing. Okay, very good. Everyone got all of this? Alhamdulillah. Okay. Continuing on, the second question that we wanted to address is, why is riba, interest, considered impermissible in Islam? So we talked about this briefly during the khutbah. If, some of you were there, some of you were not there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, multiple places in the Quran, He prohibits the riba, right? And He mentions, first of all, let's try to understand what is riba. Like, what is interest, right? Interest, riba in Islam, is the exchange of something that is considered currency, that can be considered currency. So two parties exchange something that can be considered currency with one another at an unequal amount and not in the same sitting. Okay? So both of these things have to be there. Pay attention a little bit because it's going to get a little complex. If the two things are the same in nature, like for example, US dollars for US dollars, okay? In that case, it has to be exchanged in the same sitting. Number two, it has to be an equal amount. You cannot give 100 US dollars for 110 US dollars, for example. And it doesn't matter if it's an older note, if it's a newer note, and so on and so forth, unless this note is actually not used anymore and it's become a commodity. Right? Like, sometimes you have notes that you actually cannot use in the store, but because it's so old, it's considered something antique, and now it's actually a commodity. It has its own value. Right? The paper and the thing itself has its own value, right? Not the currency. It's not currency anymore. It's commodity. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand? Like baseball cards, same thing. Or like, if some, I don't know, like if Shahid Afridi, he, bowled with a certain, he used a certain ball, like the price of that ball, that's not the same as other ones in the market, right? Now that thing has its own value. So it's a commodity. So on the other hand, if they're unequal in nature, things that can be considered currency. Now, if you actually look in